Lily,
Hey there.
hey, it's good to have you. I'm so glad that we were able to make this work.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Oh my goodness, I am probably more excited. Okay, so in fact, I know that I'm more excited. You are just such a breath of fresh air. You are, and I remember when I was on one of the boards that I served on for, was privileged to serve on for a bit of time, and you were coming on. And I just remember the announcement and the energy and the language around your skills and experiences. It perked my ears up at that moment because I hadn't met very many women, if I'm honest, maybe any, in my circle that were in the field of aviation. And not just in the field of aviation, but we're very influential in aviation in helping to establish business deals and partnerships, and being a part of some of the cutting edge growth in that space. So I'm super excited about this time that we get to spend together. And I want to start with a congratulations because let the people know in the cheap seats that who I'm talking to has been nominated as a woman. One of the, sorry, I gotta get this right. Women in leadership, the 30 women in leadership for the aviation international space, right? Women in Aviation International. Woo, get that right.
Yeah.
2025, one of the 30 influential women that's been honored with the privilege of studying and learning and being honored by Harvard University. That's fantastic. So, can we just start? Like, did you see yourself not only being in aviation, but being considered in the top 30 women who are on cutting edge influencers in this space right now? Can we just open the mic and start there?
It's one of those moments that I have to pause and pinch myself, and I'm like, is this real? Is this really happening? And there's only been a few times where I've had to do that. And the first time was when I got into this sector. Wasn't planned, although aviation was around. I wouldn't say it wasn't necessarily in my blood because growing up, I didn't really see myself in this space. In fact, I really didn't understand the opportunities that came with aviation. I was so, the first thing I immediately thought about when I thought about aviation and a career there was flight attendant or pilot.
Yep.
And even then, not to age myself, but going back 20 plus
Oh,
years.
we age gracefully. We're not perfect, so it's all good. It's all
All
good.
right, awesome. Um, I didn't even know it was possible for women to become pilots.
Yeah.
And so when I embarked on this journey and the opportunity came up to become deputy director, working on a very unique, one of a kind privatization airport project in the US,
Wow.
I had that, is this real? Is this happening? Like why am I getting selected for this? What made me stand out? Fast forward, another pinch me moment when I was announced as one of the 30 women around the world that were selected by Women in Aviation at Harvard University to go through this very unique program.
So
I
this is
mean,
a global acknowledgement.
yes,
This is not
yes,
North America. This is global.
correct, yes.
Love that. And my audience is global as well. I thank you, God, for just the amazing networks that you've connected me to. So many people will be participating in this conversation. I love that. Wow. So where did it let's file her back because you said we'll go back here again. But for the moment, I want to just maybe back up a little bit and
Mhm.
ask you the question, who is Lillie? Who is Lillie Rentz? What's your maiden name, if you don't mind sharing?
It's Belle.
Who is Lily Bell? Who is that? Who is she?
So, I
Go back to the
growing up, well, I think, we all ask these questions at the end of the day. And one thing that really hit me this past Mother's Day was when I come home, it's not about the titles. It's not being some executive hotshot. It's not being this person who has all these achievements and accomplishments, although it has become part of the fabric of who I am on the professional side. When I come home, I'm mom. And at the end of the day, that is my favorite job of all the things that I get to do. And so it's coming
I
home
love
and
this podcast. It is because maybe shameless plug there, but because it's these women who wear multiple hats, Many of them with mom in that title who recognize that we're driven to success and there are no limitations, right? There are no limitations.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, there isn't. I mean, I think you've heard the saying that the only person who's getting in your way is you. And so I know for me, I have always been known as that person who not afraid to really take up space and be myself authentically. Now, this didn't happen overnight. As I grew up and, and got more experience, that kind of just took its own shape and form over time. And I started to really honing, to your point, who I really was. And one of the biggest things for me was anything that I do, I wanted to make sure that I was going to positively impact, not just trying to improve my life, the way of life, but also the life of others. And so going back to starting my career in aviation,
Yeah.
I was given this opportunity because someone saw something in me that I didn't see myself. And so that
Isn't
really
that a thing? That's a thing though. When
it is.
you
It
see
Yeah.
something in you that you don't see yourself. Now I bet you know it now. You know your superpower now. I bet.
Yeah, no, of course,
Well,
absolutely.
what did they see?
Um,
What did they see?
They saw someone who was hungry to learn, but
Mm,
also wasn't afraid to push boundaries.
yeah,
And also someone who was just very committed and loyal to their work. I mean, in everything that I do, I really try to really, I guess, deliver with almost perfectionism or perfect, in a perfect way. Although I've stepped back a little bit from
I
that
told you
because
you were in the posse. This is our lifelong Achilles heel. We are trying to
yeah.
do all the things and we are choosing to be as excellent as possible. And that Achilles heel is when we anchor on that perfection, right? Which we all know can't happen, especially not when you're
Yeah.
doing all the things, right? But yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's that drive. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think they saw in me, apart from that hunger and drive, was just wanting to make a positive or meaningful impact and being able to positively influence those around me. And so, and I've been able to do that graciously throughout my career. I sometimes I walk out of conversations or deals that are having to be made and contracts, getting those solidified, and I walk away and I'm like, how did this happen? How did I make this happen? And without sounding too, yeah, conceited here, but
It's
it's
not.
just,
See, this is we're
yeah,
dispelling those myths in this place because, girl, so many of us are just the same, right? The minute it is time for us to toot our horn or share a credential, we get sheepish and shy, and you know what I mean. And the reality is, those are. So I'll hit you on a spiritual sense. I've come to appreciate that when I retrench in the bigness of the things that I've been inspired to do and privileged to do, I dishonor myself and my light that was perfectly and uniquely made to do these things, to draw people, right? So walk in it. Look, that's what's happening.
I appreciate that. And I've learned also, and I will say when I went to Harvard and it was a 1 week, just immersing yourself in corporate strategy, relationship building, negotiations, communications. One of the things that I really took away from all of that was the world needs what only you can bring. And so we have to take up that space. We have to speak with purpose. We have to trust that God, didn't place these visions or put us in certain scenarios or environments by accident. And so learning to really hone that in and and not be afraid to even boastfully say, yeah, I did that, because our male predecessors are doing it every single day.
What?
Yeah.
Look, there's not an assignment that your 100% peer, and I'm going to even say any of your male peers that are maybe even a notch or two below your credentials, right? They are hardwired, right? And I love men. I honor men. Period of
Hmm.
the story. I'm not a male basher by any mean of the word. However, there are some characteristic traits that I see even as a mom of boys and girl, right?
Yeah.
There's a head firstness about the boys, and there's a contemplation firstness about the girl, if that makes sense, right? The boy is like, let's go, right? Or do
Yeah.
first, act first. And the girl is like, let's think about it. So yeah, no, I get it. Totally get it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about aviation. So here, tell us your story. So, as I understand, you were actually in the healthcare industry, and
I was.
you were exposed to aviation a bit through your father,
Hmm.
but you were in the right place at the right time for somebody to recognize you for an opportunity that you couldn't have dreamt of yourself, being in the lane that you were. Unpack that a little bit for us, because I love to share how do people go from lane one to lane
Hmm.
three,
Yeah.
downshift, right? Or an upshift, however you want to look at it. How does that happen? And quite frankly, what's behind the courage that allows you to go from lane one to lane three? Can you kind of tell us a little bit about your story, and let's see if we can unpack that thinking a little bit?
Yeah, I think I'd have to start maybe from my going way back, coming from very humble beginnings. My father passed away um, 2 days after my seventh birthday. And so, with that, brought on a lot of, I mean, just so much pressure on my mother. And as a result, unfortunately, she turned to some of the negative influences, and we were removed from my mother's care and put into the foster system. This included myself and my two younger sisters. And so,
At a young
at a
age.
yeah, at a ripe 7 years of
Jesus. You're
age,
still
I
forming your own methodologies in there.
yeah, I mean, it was a lot to swallow because I would say, I never had the luxury of growing up in a, wealthy family. I wasn't a trust fund kid or anything like that. But my father, we were, I would say at that time, middle class. And when all of this happened, it really just changed my whole life. I mean, and so
How
it
so?
really flipped.
What would you say would be the one word that would kind of underpin sort of who you became, who you were, and who you became, if you had two adjectives, if you will?
I think had these events had not taken place, I probably would have grown up maybe being some snobby brat, honestly. But I mean, who knows?
So many of us say that,
Or
Lily.
yeah, yeah. I mean, because I had we had a beautiful home. I mean, I had everything, and unlike on my mother's side, the Spanish family, where they grew up as migrant farm workers, all of my family, my cousins came over to my house. We had the big elaborate birthday parties. I had the playhouse that my dad built for us. Everything that a kid could ever dream of. And so when all of that occurred, my world was flipped upside down. Being in the foster system was very interesting, but what hurt and impacted me the most was being split from my sisters. And
Yes.
all I could
I
remember,
felt that when you said it initially. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, all I could think of, and I mean, I want to say a lot of these events caused me to have to grow up pretty quickly because I remember, and I want to say at the time I was 8, maybe almost 9. I remember just thinking, God, all I want is just to be with my sisters. If we can find a home where we can just be together. And thankfully, I have a large family here who has a huge presence. And my grandmother stepped in and she was like, we have to get the family together. We have to keep these kids together. There's no way I'm gonna let my grandkids be split and, put into different foster homes. And so my family really stepped up, my uncles and aunts, and we were staying, rotating from house to house. And then finally, one of my uncles and aunts who couldn't have children of their own decided to take us in, unaware of what that process looked like. And he was still in migrant farm working work. And so the state really came in, helped them throughout that process. And then fast forward, we got adopted. My sisters and I got to stay together. And, it was the rest was history from there. But it was still a little bit challenging because I had to spend my summers in the fields working. And so I learned to value hard work.
Yeah.
And one of the things that both my uncle and aunt were middle school dropouts. And so they really wanted us to value our education and they wanted us to have a better future. And so it was always just emphasized,
Lily,
go to,
if
Mhm.
you wouldn't mind, just because we're in such a time where there's so many conversations around culture and immigration and
Mhm.
workers and all the things, I feel that we're at a point of privilege where you and I can maybe bring some true definition to what that is and who they are. Just
Yeah.
so that folks around the world that see news and hear sound bites and form opinions, it was truly in, inspiring to me and a lesson to me when we moved. My family moved from Wisconsin to Florida, and I would become more acquainted with the culture because my husband had a heart to always find wherever the kids were that had an athletic bone in their body, right? Whether it was basketball or football, he's real snobbish about the two lanes. And would create a community for our boys with those boys in underserved communities. It doesn't matter where we live, that's the heart
Mhm.
of the man. And so, same thing, he quickly got to work, which means we got to work doing that. And through that, we began to identify Golden Gate and Immokalee, and we began to identify some wonderful kids who I take great pride in. Perhaps if it weren't for at least the imprint of my husband, probably with many others, but for sure the imprint of my husband in showing these kids the art of the possible, in creating, nonprofit sports leagues and taking them places and letting them experience and lean into their talents, they would have had their destiny already lined
Mhm.
out to do things that are very different, as one is a scholarship athlete at Georgia now playing football, another one is an athlete. These are wonderful stories for me, but there's a uniqueness to what does that mean here. What does a migrant worker mean? um, that lifestyle of raising a kid. Sometimes you're in state, sometimes you're out of state. Can you just give a little bit of that education? Because I think it's relevant.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So being a migrant farm working kid, I mean, means most of the time you travel where the crops are being grown, and it's seasonal, right? So you have some that are permanent here and the family stays in one spot, but when it comes to having to migrate up north, then you have, in most cases, the fathers who will take that role and leaving and going up north. And a lot of that occurs during school year. And so there's been a lot of that has changed too over time because in the past, one of the reasons my father was a dropout from middle school was because he had to help support. I mean, he is one of 15 kids. And so when it was time to go up north, yeah, they had to get out of school and he had to go help and work with the family. In today's world, it's a little bit different. You don't have, when the kids get to a school age, they end up having to either stay in one spot and the mom will stay back, or unfortunately, there are families that do have to enroll in other schools depending on where they're going to be, if it's going to be for more than 3 months. So you see that where you have migrant farm working families and children who spend half their year, 6 months in one place and then 6 months in another place. Um,
Very
and a,
disruptive in the sense of thinking of learning, right? Even in the
yeah,
context of who's in the house, paternal, maternal, shifting. Oh, from
yep,
season to season. To perhaps the kid is moving from place to place, right? And so when we talk about things like education and we talk about accessibility, I just find it
yeah.
fascinating to understand that language. And some of the most impactful people that I've met have had that journey, and all of them hardworking, absolutely intellectually curious, and there's a courageousness and a faithfulness as well. Those would be my
I I
that
would
that's
agree.
the
Yeah.
imprint on me. Hmm.
Yeah, and definitely a huge sense of gratitude in everything. And I think it's just something instilled in us as we're young kids to be grateful for what you have. And
Mhm.
my again, going back to what my father and mom used, I call them mom and dad, they're not my uncle and aunt. They
Sure.
raised us, was, work hard, graduate from high school, and get a job.
Yeah.
Of course, their understanding of what going to college meant was never on the radar,
Mhm.
but I that also led to another opportunity for me when I got my first job. And so I got to go to school. Didn't have a vehicle. The bank that I worked at in Immokalee, by the way, because I grew up in Immokalee, provided a vehicle for me to go to night school. We didn't have online
Wow.
classes back then, so
Wow.
but I got to go to business school, and they paid for my education because my father was, very wary of the government, and he's like, "No, I can't give you my social security." I mean,
Which is a
he's
cultural
a,
thing. It's
yeah, it is
cultural.
a culture thing. He's a citizen, and I'm like, "Dad, you're going to be fine." He's like, "No, I don't. I'd rather not." But there was a way. God created a way. Let me tell you, and I got to do that. And ever since then, I think I would say like most students coming out of school who don't really know what career path they want to embark on,
Yeah.
and a lot of it heavily attributed to the fact that just didn't know what careers were out there for me. You hear about all of these white collar jobs, but no one really emphasized trade school. And back then, trade school really wasn't a big thing. So I thought, you know what, maybe I got this business degree, because it was covered by, the bank was able to provide tuition for that. It was something relative to what I was doing at the time. And then I decided, maybe I should get into the, medical field because I'm just such a humanitarian person. I really care about others.
Mm.
And I was also very curious, and I wanted to learn more about the field. And so I got an opportunity to become a front desk medical receptionist. And then within 6 months, I got promoted to a medical assistant. I learned phlebotomy, got my certification, did vitals, everything, learned about medical record systems, and so much that came with that. And I just immersed myself in so many, like, just really great books to help me understand patient outcomes and evidence-based research, and just again a lot of curiosity, more curiosity of just how things work and why, like, why do we do this, why am I asking patients for this information, like what, how does that tie to what what I'm actually doing. But then after that, 6 months later, I got promoted to being one of the youngest medical office managers, and I ran a medical practice, family practice office in Bonita Springs, and I did that for quite some time. Ultimately, I got tired of going back and forth, driving from LaBelle to Bonita Springs,
That's
and
a
I was a young mom. I was on my way to have my second child, and I wasn't happy. I got to a point where I felt like I was just giving and giving and giving, every day, but something just felt like it was lacking.
mm.
And even though I was running one of the top offices for this medical practice, I just thought there's got to be something else because I felt like I had already accomplished what I needed to do. And so I came back. I didn't have a backup plan. I resigned, and I ended up, just looking in the area, and someone had mentioned that there was a position for a project and marketing director with the Economic Development Council in Henry County. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take this as a sign. I'm going to go apply for the job and see where it leads next. It looks like this would be a really great opportunity to give back to my community.
Mm.
And so I did that, met with the director, Greg Gilman at the time, and it was more like conversational, and he just, after we got to talking and learning a little bit about each other, he's like, so when do you want to start? And I'm like, you're giving me the job? He's like, yeah, absolutely, you're here, he kind of pointed out some of the key traits that he was looking for, and
What
I
were those
started
traits,
there.
Lily? What were those traits? By the time we
The-
end this call, you're gonna have a badge with all your badassery on it. Okay, that's what I'm
yeah.
saying.
I think he saw the drive again, saw the hunger in me, and also just the authentic and genuine sincerity that I had of wanting to make a positive impact.
That's right on.
This was always beyond, it was always more than just about me.
That's right.
Um, and so, and really just wanting to figure out ways to give back.
That's what I
Um,
see in you. I mean, there's, that's exactly, I think, the essence that you give, and the spaces that you inhabit, and I think that's probably largely the testament for why you continue to find yourself in increasing spaces of importance and influence, right? Because
Yeah.
people know if you're doing it for your own selfish gain or if you're doing it to truly follow a purposeful call and to be a help, right? I love that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that has really led my entire career, and more so when I got into the aviation side. So, talking a little bit about how I got into the aviation space. So, I was in Henry County with the Economic Development Council, working on, really showcasing our assets. Not many. We're a rural community. We're predominantly known for agribusiness. And I was going through learning, who's our business leaders. We have U.S. Sugar, of course, which was one of the major, large companies here, who was, I would say, almost could probably contributing more than half of the tax base here in Henry County. But they created a lot of jobs. But then I learned about an airport project that was underway, led by Frederick Ford, who was a former airport director, now the founder and CEO of Airglaze International Airport, wanting to develop the first ever privatized air cargo commercial airport.
Wow.
And
Like
so
the
got
very
introduced to
first one
him.
in the world.
The very, yes, first one in the world. Yes. While privatization is happening in other countries, it's still relatively here in the US.
Absolutely.
And just, fun fact, the airports here that we have in the US are public use. That's a key, public use. They receive federal funding from the Federal Aviation Administration. All of the revenue that our airports generate have to go back into the airport. And so privatization was really going to transform that in the sense of encouraging private capital investment
Love that.
into these assets, and then be able to create off revenue airport, other developments and projects and revenue. So when I heard about this, I met Fred. I said, well, I guess when I go to trade shows, I got to market this. Like, this is huge, This is really going to transform Florida overall, but also the way we move goods in a more efficient manner,
That's right.
especially for perishable goods. And while again, I had some aviation background because of my father, I then started working on getting my private pilot's license. Well, actually,
Why
let me
was
take a
that
step back.
important to you? Why was that important to get your pilot's license in this whole thing?
It was important to me because I wanted to be able to connect with other
I
pilots.
get
I
that.
wanted to, I wanted to understand what it was like to be in their shoes and where they were coming
Right on.
from.
Right on. As a woman who
Um,
grew up in industrial manufacturing land, honestly, I have always said that you've got to get out there and understand what the guys are seeing and doing. And in my
yeah.
industries, it literally was guys. And even if I had the heels, and even if one of my mentors and bosses who affectionately called me heels, it didn't matter, right? You had to get close to really understand the business and the placement and all the things. So awesome. Okay, keep going. Yeah,
No,
that's
no, absolutely. But I think I skipped a part. But anyways, so got to know Fred. He approached me because I was running also a part of the Economic Development Council was a 503c nonprofit for a leadership development program for both youth and leaders in Henry County. I think similar to the leadership program that Collier County has.
okay.
And I really get to expose individuals on some of the hidden gems here in Henry County and get to learn more about your community and ways you could give back. Oh, so anyways, I was taking the adult leadership class over to the airport to learn about this fascinating project. And towards the end of it, as everybody was getting back on the bus and we were going to go to our next stop, he pulls me aside and Fred, and he's like, "Hey, Lily, I got to talk to you. I've been looking for someone to come in and help me with the role, and I'm going to need someone to help fill my shoes because, I'm in my 70s. I'm not going to be here a long time, and I need someone to help support." And at first, I was a little bit confused, but then I was like, "Oh yeah, I heard you needed somebody. You're looking for like an assistant, and I have the perfect person for you in mind. So I'll send her contact information to you." And he's like, "No, no, no, you don't understand. I want you to come work for
Wow.
me." And he's like, I'm going to send a recruiter to you tomorrow for lunch. Let me know what time. Send me a resume tonight and we'll go from there. And I was just dumbfounded. I'm like, what? What are we talking about? He's like,
So you could be
I
doing
don't,
anything, and we have to put a pin right here because for the people, especially those that are earlier in their career journey, what you'll hear as you continue to listen to the Proven Not Perfect community is those that ascend to the highest heights. You never know who's in the space with you. You never know who is assessing you for something different than what you think, right? He
yeah,
was watching you and watching you for a different assignment, but he saw you because you were doing the assignment you were doing with a view toward excellence. That's right on.
yeah. And, when I asked him, I'm like, why me? He's like, look, Lily, I've gotten to know you. I've asked a lot of leaders in this business leaders in this community to give me their top three candidates for this deputy director role. And your name was on everybody's list.
There you go.
So
There you
that was just mind, blowing to me. And I went home, you know, I told him, look, I gotta sleep on it. He's like, don't sleep on it. I'm sending a recruiter tomorrow,
Wow.
you know. And I met with a recruiter and it was
Another lesson,
basically,
when
yeah,
opportunity comes, usually you don't have time to think about it.
you
It's an
don't.
act now.
Yeah.
Like that is absolutely story in my career. When opportunity comes, it's not like we're thinking about anything. It's happening. And either you are getting on the train
Yeah.
for it or it moves on to the next person. That's a
Yeah.
word for somebody. I don't know who, but that's a word for somebody. Go ahead.
No, I truly believe that when opportunity comes knocking on the door or when this train is coming, you have to make an immediate decision. No sleep on it, no thinking it's yes or no. And I had this pull almost. I
Oh,
said, I have to go in this direction.
I love it.
And I didn't know what it was going to entail. I was just thinking aviation. I even started having that imposter syndrome that we talk about all the time.
Of course.
And when I met with the recruiter, all of that went away. She talked to me and she's like, look, I'm just here to give you the job. I'm not here to interview you. I'm not here to question,
Girl.
your weaknesses or strengths.
But that
And
that is walking in peace too. I mean, because
it,
people say, how do you know to make that decision? What makes you feel confident going doing this or doing that or pivoting and switching? When there is peace,
yeah.
if it's really for you, I think you know. And
Mhm.
typically, if you start something and there's no peace there,
Yeah.
doesn't mean
No,
it'll
and I,
stay peaceful because there will be a
yeah,
time when it's time to disrupt you on out of that situation too.
no, you're absolutely right. And I remember in that moment in the back of my mind, because I prayed on it too, and I said, look, I'm going to ask them some certain questions.
Yeah.
And if it's not going to impact, number one, the fact that I'm a mom, and I want to be able to still take my kids to school every morning and drop them off. And then also just making sure that I'm able to continue and finish out this leadership program that I started.
Hmm.
And all the boxes, as I was asking the questions, were just getting checked off. And I said, you know what? My decision's already made. So I was doing both jobs for about I want to say 3 months,
Wow.
trying to help transition the Economic Development Council to get to where they need to have a replacement for me. Finish up the leadership program, which that went through all the way through May to graduation, and then also get into being fire hose with what my new role was going to entail as an deputy director at the time, later promoted to airport director. And so it's been a wild ride or wild journey since then, because if you would have asked me, from the time that I got adopted, graduated high school, started my first job and said, do you see yourself in this space? I would have told you no, there's no way. Like I would never be doing that. Fast forward, living and breathing it every day, and now a huge advocate for women to also take up space here because we need more women leaders.
Whew,
So
that part. Really. I mean,
yeah.
seriously, that journey of getting to be the director of the first public private partnership in aviation. insane. Um,
Yeah.
and now the path that you have, and I think about all the things that are happening in and around aviation right now, um, whether it's, the transition to electric, whether it's the
Mhm.
transition of transportation alternatives. I'd love for you to talk about some of those things, and I think it's going to be a direct tie to inspire, those that are behind us, if you will, as they're thinking about what does the future look like for me. Let's start
Mhm.
talking about the future based on what's happening now, because I think that this will resonate for some young woman that's saying, I had no idea that I could do more than, be a flight attendant or a pilot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what are the trends that are happening right now that are driving aviation that you would point out as the top three trends.
So advanced air mobility is a huge topic. It's been the buzzword for quite some time. It's not science fiction. It's here. It's happening, and people don't really know or really understand what that entails.
So tell the people,
And
because people are listening, they're like, okay, got it. What is that?
so advanced air mobility is really going to transform the aviation industry in the sense of how we move people and goods.
Mm,
And then not only that, but also provide disaster relief and be able to promote a more connected world. I mean, aviation has already done such a great job to date on the way that we're able to connect with other people, other places, and be able to move in ways that we never thought that we could before.
yeah.
But this is really going to transform urban air mobility in
Mm,
the sense of regional networks on how we move people again and goods in a more efficient way. On top of all of that is really there's a lot of technology that's driving towards that efficiency
mhm,
and and also with a huge focus on airspace safety.
mm.
And so you've probably heard in the news about air traffic control. There's huge
Yes.
shortages. The FAA is
It's scary.
utilizing,
So scary.
yeah, it is. It really is. But a lot of those incursions or mid-air things that are collisions and things that happen, there's a lot more to unpack there. We won't get into that today.
Yeah.
But I think as we start to see these new electrical vertical takeoff and landing, we call them eVTOLs, be manufactured, and they're being manufactured as we speak because we have two major facilities that have already been built by some of the leaders in this space here in the U.S., which includes Joby and Archer. I'll give some name drops here,
I love it. I
org-
love it. You're the
organizations, but
thought leader. Drop them names, lady.
yeah, no, definitely. So now that I'm, former airport director, now just emerged in the space with my, consulting firm, I've been spending a lot of time really just understanding what this means for us. And it's super exciting because when the concept of the drones came out and seeing drones flying everywhere, everybody was frightened by it. We didn't know, this is mean that we're going to have all of these small vehicles moving around us. But these type of aerial vehicles have been around for such a long time. Our military uses them. I mean, my 94-year-old granddad will tell me back when in his early 2030s, they had drones. I've seen pictures of it. I mean, it's so this, those type of vehicles have been around. Fast forward though, to be able to move, say for example, you wanted to be in Orlando or Miami, but you just didn't want to spend the time on the road to, get there, that drive time. This is really going to cut that. And the objective, I don't want to say it this way because there's really a lot of beneficial, aspects to this. But one of the critical, most important thing is time. And as you know, in this fast-paced world that we live on of just go,
Right.
go, go nonstop,
Mhm.
time is everything.
Everything.
And so whenever I learned about the concept and I got approached by Skyway Technologies to work in leading their business development arm, I went in, just deep dive and wanting to understand how does this industry going to work? What does it mean? What does it mean for our communities? What does it mean for, me as an individual? And really started connecting the dots. And this is where everything just came back full circle because this is where I saw win-wins everywhere. And I started just picking up the phone, calling up, individuals that I've collaborated before in the past and bringing them into this space, and saw opportunities where they could also diversify their business portfolios
I love it.
and start thinking, what does this space look like? Mind you, we're just talking about eVTOLs right now. This is a $1 billion industry. By 2040, it's going to be a $1 trillion industry.
Wow.
And so there is a lot of money that is being poured into this. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of eVTOL manufacturers. Some have, fallen off of the grid due to cash burn rates and et cetera. But you're seeing a lot of the runners like Joby, Archer, and Beta Technologies who are really getting to that certification process to making this a reality. Again, folks, who's ever listening, this is not science fiction. This is real. We're talking about Star Wars. We're talking about the Jetsons, if you know, if you even know what that is. And
Yes.
we're going to really have these we call air taxis, being able to pick you up at certain destinations and take you to those urban areas, or being able to have accessibility to rural areas that have never had an airport, or are able to to get to other places in a more quickly or timely manner. I mean,
That's a
at
game
the
changer for business in total, right? Because
it is.
to your point, it's connecting the dots. Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly there's an interstate component, I would imagine, as well within a regional viewpoint. But
Yes.
interesting, I think, I don't care what state you live in, the notion of conducting business in rural and conducting business in urban, and also leading government, it creates a dichotomy of ease and even transacting and even getting face to face and having a conversation, right?
Yeah.
What you're talking about literally will change the game of that dynamic. And I think it increases the voice and the input of the rural. And I think it brings them to the table in government, right? A little
Hmm.
bit more even than they were today. And it certainly normalizes, the more metropolitan viewpoint as well. I love this.
Yeah, I think for me, the immediate connection, or the where we just became like, aha, this is a no-brainer, was I was like, so you're telling me that I go to Miami a lot for business, to meet with clients, to meet with business prospects, etc. And it takes me almost 3 hours, sometimes 3.5 hours one way to get down there and then back. So I'm spending 6, 7 hours on the road. You're telling me I can go there and go to my neighboring, airport, get on an eVTOL, be there within 20 minutes,
Mm.
potentially could even have one of these in a downtown the Brickell area, and be able to meet with someone over breakfast, coffee, whatever, and then be back home in time to pick up my kids, definitely be back home in time for dinner. Where do I sign up? Like, now there's been a lot of conversation around, well, to start, it is going to be very expensive.
Yeah,
This is only for the rich.
yeah,
And I'm telling you, that's not the case. As things continue to grow and demand is there and things start scaling, prices will go down. The
absolutely.
game changer that's really will impact this is the moment when the pilot gets removed from the equation. And
Yes.
I say this because
And
we're
they're
now
removing
talking about,
themselves. Aren't they removing
yeah,
themselves? Because the number of pilots is not what it used to be, needs to be, if I'm
yeah.
getting the facts
No,
correct.
that's the other thing I asked. Well, there's a huge shortage of pilots. How
Yes.
are we going? I understand the FAA and their whole crawl, walk, run phase. I understand. It has to be piloted until we have enough data to reflect the safety of this vehicle being able to operate by itself. But these vehicles are being manufactured to be autonomous.
Yeah.
And when that that happens, it's just going to be an on and off switch.
Mm.
So, I mean, right now, I think a lot of it is from, a public acceptance piece. And I completely understand that. And I respect that process, because it is going to be something new. We're going to be seeing vehicles flying at a lower altitude. We're going to, see folks as we're driving on these main interstates, vehicles flying overhead of us, like skyways in the sky,
So crazy.
in the sky. So it's just one of those things where I think at that moment, then somebody will say, "Why am I down here and not up there?"
I
But
love
but
that.
But the end goal is to provide equitable access to everybody.
Yes.
This is not just for the rich. The rich, so yeah, Mr. Moneybags can go and probably pay, have his own self-driving vehicle, and yeah, no problem. But it's really going to be for everybody, and allow us to be able to connect and move in ways that we've never done before in a more efficient manner. Safety is another big thing driving all of this. Again, I talked about airspace and the safety measures that are going to be coming into fold with that. With all the technology that's being developed right now, it really is going to be, it's going to redefine our airspace and how that's controlled. And that's what I'm so excited about because, to your point, when you hear these stories and, the shortages also with ATC,
Yep.
the shortage of pilots and the pilots that are working more than they should and be in flying, it's really going to help bridge those gaps and really help us ensure that we are moving people in the most safe way, so they don't have to worry about whether or not did this pilot that's on this aircraft. I wondered, am I like the first person that they're transporting, or is this like they're an overnight, like you don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that and everything that's being developed there. I think it's also going to be a great tool for even existing aviation. As
Mm.
much as I respect, the way that we have done things in aviation, the traditional ways, I know that there's opportunity to make things better. And that's really where a lot of my drive comes from, because we have to start thinking smarter. We have to start thinking, how do we make things more efficient and stop taking that work harder, not smarter approach, or this is how
Yes.
it's always been. This is how I know I can't stomach that anymore. I'm like,
Oh, and it's
we
unnecessary.
there
It's just not
it
smart.
is.
The technology
Yeah. It's
has caught up to help us to be smarter, right? And so
yeah.
people that are neglecting the technology advancements to help you be smarter, quicker, and more efficient, you can look at it two ways. Now I'm, overdriving over here more, or you can say, or I'm going deeper in the thing that, I should be, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a valid point, because it makes me think of Julie Jungawala, who's a professor at Harvard, Pamela Rucker, who was my coach and also instructor at Harvard, who led corporate strategy. One of the things she said was, it's not that AI is going to replace people, it's going to be people who don't have the AI skills that are going to be replaced.
That part. I firmly
And
believe that.
so we're now entering this, I mean, just massive, opportunity of all of these technology and ways that can really advance and propel us forward.
Mhm.
And so for in the aviation space, the technology exists, the technology is there. I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
Why there's this disconnect between federal government and private entities. I think generally they know that they don't want to manage that they're going to have to look to a third party to come in and help
Yeah.
bridge this gap. And really, this is where P3 comes into place. Of course, it's going to need government oversight. I don't think one sole entity, including the company that I was working with, we all agreed shouldn't have exclusivity over this type of technology and data. We have to make sure that it does have the proper chains of oversight. But the other critical piece in all of this is energy.
Mm.
We need energy to
Yes.
really enable this, because you're talking about battery technology. And as battery technology continues to mature, the need for energy becomes more prevalent. And a lot of your airports today, if you're looking to put in infrastructure to develop a vertiport to support these vehicles and their operations, a lot of them don't have those, energy, bandwidths to be able to support even like ground vehicles or EVs coming in, let alone now eVTOL that's equivalent to two Teslas being charged. I mean, yeah, so there's going to be a lot of considerations for that. Skyway did a really great job, and through some of our brainstorming sessions, we talked about the need for energy and not pinpointing this responsibility on airports, but also from a regional perspective, thinking about where these vehicles could park overnight. So imagine like these going to a hive at the end of the day. The
Yeah.
same thing would be with these vehicles. So strategically placing, they called it vertiparks, where these vehicles could come in, charge, receive maintenance, sanitization, and then be on their way to the next, wherever they need to be deployed. And the reality is similar to how you use your phone to call up an Uber or a Lyft. The same principle is going to apply with these vehicles. You'll call up one of these air taxis or schedule them, go to that destination, get on board, and of course, there's security measures and stuff behind all of that to make sure, the right person is on that vehicle. But and then you'll be on your way. And so I know Uber has also looked into this space.
It's
You
new
know,
economy, right? I mean, Lily,
it is.
I listen to you talk. It's so, there's so many opportunities for someone growing in their career, someone identifying an investment portfolio, someone identifying a new product portfolio strategy for aviation industry as a manufacturer. Three
Yeah,
different lanes, three different viewpoints, right? There's so much opportunity here because it's a new economy. And with new economies, really it becomes okay, what do you have to offer? And what are the unfolding needs? And some of them I think are low hanging fruit because with every new economy, they will need
mhm.
service, they will need
Yep,
parts, they will need infrastructure, they will
mhm.
need dot, dot, dot. And so
Correct.
on the ground floor of that thinking in a funded private manner, I think is really, really impactful and really setting you up to have an influential position and voice as this new economy, which I'm going to call it because it really is, starts to take
It
shape.
is.
Yeah. Wow.
No, absolutely. And if you and when you start thinking about economies of scale and what that looks like, I mean, it's a new emerging market. The
Yeah.
possibilities are endless. And so we're just scratching on the surface. And I am, one of the things about me is I'm a visionary. I don't think about planning for this space in the next 5 years. I think 10, 20, 50
That's it.
and succession planning. What does that also look at as in terms of preparing the next, leaders in this space and the opportunities that it's going to create?
Yeah.
Airports don't know how to operate this. They don't know how to manage a vertiport. And so, working with, the Silicon Valley folks
Yeah.
with a combination, it's like a sort of like you have conventional airport folks like myself, Silicon Valley folks who are in cyber defense, technology, enterprises, and creating this eight sort of aviation fusion. It's been really fascinating and exciting because it really kind of goes to back to the sky is not the limit. There
Mm.
is so many things that we can really do in this space, and airports have always been like little cities, and so beyond the pilot and the flight attendant jobs, and because there's there's always going to be a need for those,
Yeah.
but there's other opportunities, in aviation management, in public safety, because you have to have fire rescue, you have to have security, and then you have, the federal jobs as well that are attached to that for, air traffic control, CBP, TSA. And then, there's just so much that goes into making airports move, and airports don't sleep, quite frankly. And if you've only seen one airport, as the aviation proverb goes, you've only seen one airport. Every
Wow.
airport operates different. And it's crazy as much as I talk about this space, it's also such a very close-knit small world,
Mm.
and there's so much communication, between the two. I go to so many conferences and you see a lot of the familiar faces. You see a lot of folks who are really just, killing it in their role. And a lot of great leaders who are really working towards trying to better their airports and really create sustaining, airports based off of the public use that they are. But again, P3 and more so, private capital coming into this space, it's huge. Um, and I think almost you could probably tap into every segment, or someone who that could provide some sort of level of service in this. I mean, there's education opportunities, there's development opportunities, real estate opportunities, pilot training, because I'm like, what is that even going to look like? But I think you're also going to see a lot of new aviation jobs and aviation technology jobs that's going to require a new skill set as we start going or moving forward into this space. And I say that because now we're talking about remote air traffic control systems. We're talking about gaming situations that looks like my son, my 16-year-old, sitting in his chair, like monitoring, flights and only having to really step in manually when the system is telling him that there is an issue. There's a flock of birds coming. I mean, the technology is so sophisticated. And we need that today with traditional air carriers that move people and freight. So, super exciting stuff, a lot of opportunities. I can't wait for our nation to talk more about it.
Yes.
We're just
I want
scratching
to
on the
partner with you
surface.
on that, by the way, because as I'm listening to you talk, so many entrepreneurial ideas have just popped in my head. And I think there is a natural timing and an opportunity that's unfolding.
Hmm.
So, I love that you're in this space. I love that you are thinking about it long term, right? Because I think when you
Yeah.
keep your anchor on the future and you also bring in that notion of succession, you are being an unselfish leader and you're truly being a visionary, right? Um, so many people get stuck on what they are going to do.
Yeah.
Very few people get stuck on what will be happening. And I think it's subtle, but I think those of us that truly get it understand that it's bigger than us.
Yes,
Find it,
absolutely.
it's your heart. It's only for you to put one foot after the next, even though you're like, I'm the most least likely person to do the thing that is on my heart to do. But okay, here we go. Here we go. Here's
Yeah.
the mic, here's the screen. Let's do this, right? And everything else just comes. So Lillie, super excited to continue to watch the things that happen. If you are going to leave behind just, the most important thing on your mind right now to this community of women who wear many hats, who are driven for success, who spend time thinking about leadership and self care and networks and faith and family. And the reason why they're here is because they enjoy being inspired and encouraged by women that are doing these things. What are you leaving behind for them?
I think for me, and I think this just goes back to my entire career and looking back and really what I try to do now in this space as a woman advocate for, more aviation leaders. I think really it's just don't wait for permission. If
Oof,
there's anything, become who you're meant to be
got me about
and
to
just,
like
yeah,
dance.
because the world only needs what you can bring. And sometimes we don't realize that, but others, like you said earlier in our conversation, they see it.
Hmm.
So take up that space, speak with purpose.
Amen.
Everything I do, again, it's just, I pray about this. I want to make sure that it's me being, not selfish, but thinking again about others. I have kids, so I'm constantly thinking about how do I make the world a better place for them. And trust God that He doesn't place these opportunities or these visions in your heart just by accident. So,
Wow, Lily, this was so good. We could keep talking. There's so
yes,
much
yes.
more to unpack. I'm super excited about the future of aviation. I am super inspired to go and
Mhm.
continue to learn more than I already understand. I'm sure that our listeners are as well. If folks want to tap into you, is LinkedIn a good place? Is there a website? Where can they tap into you as they want to unpack thought leadership in this place?
I would definitely suggest they connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to get in touch with me, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
Sounds wonderful. Lily, thank you so much for visiting with Proven Not Perfect. You are now officially a part of the Proven Posse. And let's
Yay!
roll, girl. Let's roll. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.